Oi, you know what time it is? You're tuned in listening to Drive That Aussie Metal Guy. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any of his content when it drops. And remember, stay brutal, you mad dogs. Roof.
G'day, how are you all going? It's Drive That Aussie Metal Guy here with Crank.com and with that metal station. So tonight, wherever you are in the world, it was great pleasure that I'm having a chat with FARAH NAZ of Fading Nemesis, whose recent track is a reimagining of the one Men North of Richmond by Oliver Anthony Music. But you've had one hell of a career starting off very, very early in your home there, which I'm pretty keen to find out more about. FARAH, thank you for joining me, my friend.
Thank you for having me. Brilliant to be here. Yeah.
Absolute pleasure. As I kind of alluded to, you've had a pretty large career in music, I should say, starting out very young, kind of influenced a lot from your family and your father as well. Can you tell me a little bit about first maybe your earliest musical memory, and then tell us about, you know, growing up in this home?
Absolutely. Yeah, music. My mom always says that I sang before I spoke. So it was almost as if I was born with a voice to sing rather than to speak. I think I took a while to start talking, but when I started talking, you couldn't stop me. But the musical home that I grew up in, my father was a sitar player, quite incredible sitar player at that. He never went professional with it. He was an engineer, but we always had music parties at our home. And so the likes of Ravi Shankar and all these amazing Eastern, you know, classical greats would come to our home once a month for these musical parties. So at the end of the day, there was such an influx of amazing sounds and talent and greatness coming into my ears. And at the same time, I had cousins, as you know, I had cousins living in England, Canada, the States. And so I had records being sent to me nonstop from cousins. So I was listening to Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and then there was Ravi Shankar and my dad. So there was this crashing of the East and the West happening in my head. And I think that created everything that I am, you know, whether it's my style, whether it's my songwriting, whether it's my everything. It influenced everything. So the East kind of crashed into the West and had this gorgeous marriage. So the music was a very big part of it.
It's kind of like almost like a little catchphrase of your life as well, where East meets West. You were born in Pakistan, I believe, and you kind of started there, and then you moved over to Texas. Which
my parents moved to Dallas, Texas, of all places. Exactly.
What was that like as a young child moving over there, and then, you know, having that, and then kind of
all of a sudden I had Texas cowboy boots and we were going to the Dallas to the JR Ranch for to see where we moved. And I think again, the reality was so intensely opposite that my life has been that. It's been extremes coming together. It was incredible. First of all, we grew up, you know, watching television shows, and coming to the States, it was nothing like what we had imagined. But at the same time, I was young enough to actually know that I could create whatever I wanted. And at a very young age, I mean, even though I was born in Pakistan, you know, we grew up in I was born into a Christian family. So we joined a church immediately when we got to Dallas. And it was not a small church. Dallas, as you know, Texas does nothing small. So we ended up in a mega church. And I remember at age 11, I was asked to sing the solo for Easter service. And I'm thinking, here I am, I'm a kid. And so I decided to do Amazing Grace a cappella. And I remember at the end I had my eyes closed, and I remember opening my eyes after I finished, and there was a standing ovation of 8,000 plus people. And I thought, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. I'm going to sing. And so it started, that passion was there, but it was definitely solidified that day on Easter Sunday, where I knew there would be an audience in front of me. Always.
I think if I read correctly, you kind of sang a little bit at some gatherings and performances and things like that, kind of around that age too. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I was constantly touring, whether it was with vocal groups or choir at school. It was constant part of my life. Even though my father had, you know, which Pakistani doesn't go to med school and becomes a doctor, right? So my father thought I was going to be a doctor, which I pursued all the way through to the end. But I was singing. That was a part of my life. Weekends were always singing. I was traveling. I had to balance singing with school. I had to balance it always. So singing was always a part of my life.
And that's crazy that you've actually kept that passion for singing as well. When you're younger, you're like kind of go, I want to be this, and you chuck everything kind of into it, and then you kind of get a little bit older and you become a teenager and you're like kind of veer off different routes. Tell us a little bit about kind of leading into that, because you kept pushing through as well, and you kept that motivation and the passion.
You know, exactly, because I think it was more than just a hobby. I mean, it was something that I couldn't, even if I put it down, I would be writing songs, and before I knew it, producers were picking up the songs, and so it was an unending well. Even now, if I lay it down, I guarantee you, in a month, I'll have 12 songs that will just show up. And I have to give birth to them. I don't know how else to say it. I have to get them out. And once I get them out, I get them into the studio. So there is just a constant sense. It's a calling more than a hobby. It will not leave me alone. So I think I had no choice. You know, at the end of the day, it's something I enjoyed doing, but it's something that I can't get away from.
Yep.
You know.
So, I totally get that. And then coming from kind of Pakistan to Texas, and then kind of going over to London and living in UK. I did a really good chat with Al Anderson, the guitarist from the original Wailers, and he went from New York to London over to Jamaica as well. And it would have been a really eye-opening experience coming from Pakistan to Texas to London as well, and all these little social kind of mannerisms and countries. And
well, being Pakistani, you know, we've been so influenced by the British, so it was almost like going home. And my musical taste, I had a real love for the British invasion. I had a real love for, you know, British fashion. It was like being all of a sudden at Hamley's for adults. You know, I was at a kid's toy store, so I grew a lot. I got to discover, because there are not as many boundaries in the UK, you know, as far as creativity goes. Yeah, BBC, there are a ton of boundaries. BBC Radio is another story, right? But as far as a culture goes, you can experiment with pretty much anything you want, and it's accepted. And so it gave me time to really explore who I was, what I wanted. And I think coming back to the States, I realized I'm a songwriter, and not only that, I'm a storyteller. Strip it down to the basic nuts and bolts. It's about words for me. It's about connecting with an audience. It's about communicating messages for me. And so, that's kind of where music always strips down for me. I don't care what genre you put it in. I mean, I love heavy. The heavier, the better, you know, but also it's melodic. It's got to have that. And that's my dad's influence. It's the Eastern influence in me. So.
Yeah, it's got some amazing melodies and Fading Nemesis. Can you tell me a little bit about kind of where this kind of all began for you? Because I did see some stuff from back in 2012.
Yeah.
Right. And it's kind of
that's what I moved back to the States.
Yeah,
it was on there. We tried to get it off in time, but it was too late. No, in 2012, in 2009, there was a huge family tragedy that happened that brought us back to the States. And I had at that point decided that I'm putting down music. I was going to do something else, create, I don't know. I had clothing lines that were going to come out. I had a perfume line that was going to come out. I was writing books at the time. I thought I could go any direction, but music's going to come to a halt for a bit. And so when I came to the States, I decided, I had loved Arizona, loved the heat. There's some people say, oh yeah, it's so hot, but it's a dry heat. I mean, I know that's a joke, but there's something quite healing about the land here. The Sonoran Desert has something quite magical to it. So I thought, you know, to heal from the pain, I needed to visit somewhere like Arizona. And so I came here and ended up moving here. And the music came easily because I was processing the pain. And I met Larry Elia, who is my producer, who I ended up meeting in 2012. I randomly Googled him on a drunken night and kept finding his name. I Googled the best metal producer in the Valley, and his name kept popping up. So I just happened to find his number and just called him. And that's how we met. We set up a time for me to fly into Arizona, and that EP that we did in 2012 turned into a process. Basically, I asked him, I said, give me time, let me process what I'm doing if I'm going back into music. and I'll do my record with you. And we ended up starting the record together and finished it. It was an incredible journey. And that's coming out in 2024, spring of 2024.
Yeah, well, that's where I was jumping to now. Jump to 10, 11 years later as well. You kind of come out with the Queen of Blame, the Allegiance, This Is a War, Never Be, Cage, kind of rounding up again. Was this kind of like, look, I'm really going to get into this now. I've kind of processed everything I've been through, because as you kind of touched on there, music is kind of reaches across boundaries and language barriers. And when we're at our most vulnerable, music is there. It's always something that's been there for me through the loss. I lost my brothers, and my brother died when I was 16, and then that was a really tough thing to deal with as well. And music was always there for me, something I could express myself through, be it the artist and just writing and just listening. And it's for you, it would have been a very cathartic experience, kind of going through this pain, this trauma, and then coming back to music and kind of rediscovering this passion for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, you're absolutely correct. I mean, when nothing else is there, what do? We put our headphones on, or we dive into the songs that speak, because music is a universal language. And not only is it universal language, it's a psychological language. It doesn't take explanation. You feel it, you hear it, it heals, it soothes, it causes you to have escape. It does all of those things immediately. Right. And so, the writing, being able to write the emotions, being able to write the experiences, it's a great privilege. And every one of these songs on the record has a very intense story behind it. Now, are all the songs heavy? No, they can be translated into anyone's life. I think they're about relationships. They're about pain. Really, it's a story. Every song is a story.
Exactly what you touched on there. You're a storyteller. And that's one thing you kind of do meld, the Eastern and Western. It's kind of the Americana storytelling with a bit of the metal, the hard rock, and then kind of a little bit of the Eastern sounds as well. And you've got some amazing artists you've kind of composed and comprised to get together for this. Tell us about some of the people you're working with. You got we got Jason, Kyle, and Chris,
Yes. So when Larry and I began, I had told him, I said, look, here's the thing. I'm not in the bandwidth to put together a band. What I want to do is I want to write the record. This is about the record, not about creating a rock band. So we began the process together. After a handful of songs, I met Jason, and lo and behold, had no idea Jason was even a guitar player when we started a relationship. Jason, by the way, now is my husband. I had no idea, right? And so come to find out, one day I hear him playing the guitar, and I'm like, this is unbelievable. You're literally the perfect match. And so we started writing. So then it was Jason, me, and Larry in the studio. And so we finished the songs, and I wanted to get someone to come in and do drums, play drums. And we got Ben from Nothing More to come in, because he's a friend. And I thought, why not? Let's get this amazing drummer to come in. So after the record finished, again, it's so organic, Jai, that I thought, now it's time to take this to the people, which means now I need to have a live drummer and a live bass player. And then we auditioned and ended up with Chris and Kyle. So it was a perfect organic process. And now, we finished the record. Then we had the chance to go out with Peyton Parrish for a few shows, which was incredible to see if the songs were even going to work.
And it'll go.
They did. And luckily I got to start in my hometown in Dallas in Texas. So it was incredible. So now we're just finishing up, getting ready, and spring, we're going to hit it hard with touring and all of that once the record comes out.
Texas has a cool scene over there. I've interviewed quite a lot of bands out of Texas.
I don't care what people say. They support music. I tell you, if music's going to do well somewhere, it will do well in Texas.
Well, that's the thing too. Everyone's got to realize, like, these days, it's a lot more getting out to these shows and really, really supporting the scene. It's not so much everyone's all on these streaming platforms, which is great, which all your music's up on Spotify as well. But
exactly.
It means the world to an artist when people go along to these shows, go over to the
COVID didn't help, right? Everybody was shut down. Everybody was shut down forcefully. So, and it impacted musicians, and music.
Well, did you come out of COVID going, you know what, look, we've just wasted all this time, bugger it, I'm going to get in there and really work for this? Or
Well, you know what happened was I was in the studio, and then all of this stuff happened with COVID, and I thought, okay, maybe I'm not supposed to be back in music. So I wrote 2 books during COVID, which will be coming out next year. So I finished a book, and it was incredible. I mean, 200-page book, and when it's ready to actually be out, I'm going to self-publish it eventually. And then a second one was there. So I wrote a second book, and then all of a sudden things started opening up, and I went back into the studio all of a sudden. So it wasn't a wasted time for me, but we had to wait it out. Right. So you put out a record, but then people can't go see shows because clubs are shutting down left and right. Venues are shutting down, and people can't be in, 500 feet of each other, or they're gonna die.
I know,
it's frantic.
I know, and now they're coming back. There's so many shows, you can't really go to them all because all these bands. I know in Australia, everybody's coming at the moment.
That's nice though. It's nice.
It is amazingly nice, and it's really, really good to see.
It's all about the audience. It's all about the connection for the artist with the audience. There's nothing more. I mean, that's it. That's the reason I do it. That's the reason I do it. I don't do it for any other reason but my audience.
Exactly. And having that audience there when you're playing live to them, playing these tracks. Tell us a little bit about the first kind of tracks you started bringing out. Queen of Blame, was that the first one you kind of released as the restarting of Fading Nemesis, shall we say?
Yes, she was the Queen of Blame. I think I had a lot of anger. And I think, again, the name itself, Nemesis, I don't know if you know, she's the Greek goddess of justice. And if you know anything about Greek mythology and what her role was, it was to create balance. If there was too much good, then she would create evil. If there was too much evil, she would create good. So I've always been the creature. If at school, say I was 6 or 7 and I saw someone being bullied, well, I would create balance by standing up for the one who was being bullied and creating judgment, being the judge. And I think Queen of Blame was more about coming to the end of myself as judge, and I always feel like that I had an understanding of what is wrong with society, what is wrong. I can see it. There's a second sight, and Queen of Blame was my kind of like Calypso kind of a statement, to the world. So it was a good one to put out first because there was so much angst and so much anxiety in me.
Yeah, well, I'm loving the releases. I love the different sounds and the different balances, and you can kind of see the different influences you've had there. But can you tell me a little bit about some of the people that kind of influenced and inspired you, and more recently this album?
I think personally, I think Jason would have his influences as a guitar player, and for me as a songwriter, it's who has written amazing songs. We can go early to. Johnny Cash, I had a huge influence. Johnny, he picked up a guitar and he told a story. To Tori Amos had a huge, she was quirky as fuck. I love really,
Tori Amos too.
Really. But then there's also, Chris Cornell, huge for me, and Bowie, huge for me. It boils down to who wrote songs that had a story behind it.
Yep.
So it was songwriters, really.
Yeah. So storytellers in general.
Chris Cornell,
some of the greatest musicians, storytellers.
Saddest thing with his life, but there was not a song that Chris Cornell didn't sing that I didn't feel like I was moved. I understood. Linkin Park's the same way. It's storytelling. If there's a story behind it, it influences me. So
exactly, I love that Americana sound, the storytelling. I've been getting a lot more into the folk and roots and blues and underground stuff. It's absolutely unreal. Like I'll be listening to Cannibal Corpse and jumping into some of that. It's not a problem to me at all. Can I talk about the latest track, the Men North of Richmond, which is a reimagined rendition of Oliver Anthony Music's track? And look, to be honest, people, don't throw stones at me. I hadn't heard this track. I knew it was out there.
No, it's all
I knew it
right.
was out there, but
Yeah,
when
yeah,
I
yeah.
got the chance to check yours out, I just kind of avoided it for some reason.
Yeah.
I actually did get to listen to that, and I listened to yours. And sorry, Oliver, I like yours better.
Well, thank you, John. Here's the thing with that track. It was getting so much commotion. My parents, I'm telling you, my parents in Dallas, Texas, they watch a lot of news, and they were like, yeah, we saw Oliver Anthony on CNN or some news station. And I thought, what is this song about? Who is this person? Because somehow BBC did an interview with him, and I'm like, who is this person? What is it about him and about this particular song that touched millions so fast? They had statistics. I mean, the stats couldn't keep up with them. They had to create a new way to measure analytics because of Oliver Anthony. So I listened to the track and I thought, you know what it is? It's the fact that he's so oblivious to the fact that there is a world out there. He's singing his heart out. It is so simple. It appears to be backwards, but it's so intelligent. There's some intelligence behind every single statement that he's making in that, in that track. I thought, if I were to have written this song, what would it sound like? I mean, millions have heard it, but maybe there are others that haven't heard it because of the genre. What would happen if it became Fading Nemesis? Exactly, like you. So we redid it. We reimagined it. Dusty Bowles, who's an incredible producer, he's another producer that I'm working with, absolutely killed it, nailed it. And I spent some time making it my own.
You certainly did make it your own. I played that for my sisters because they'd rocked up to visit me this morning, and
oh, fantastic!
Mentioned the track, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I know that Oliver Anthony music one." So I'm like, "Have a listen to this." And then one of my sisters got Shazam out straight away. She's going, "What an amazing voice! Absolutely unreal." And it's also kind of a track that Americans kind of, for me, sorry Americans, I love all of you. You're all amazing. But it's a track people need to come back to as we come into politics, because it kind of, you had so many listens across America. Everyone's like, man, I love this track. But now politics are gearing up. Everyone's going to be like crazy mad over politicians. And you've been across the world. You see what it's like. It's a crazy time in America for politicians.
It's a crazy time.
Is kind of an anti-political track as well. The rich man north of Richmond. Like they kind of, all politicians are out there to screw us.
You know, the irony of this song is that he never meant it to be a political song. No. I don't know if you know this. He never meant for it to be an anthem or an election song.
Or an anti-political song.
Never expected it to be that. And so that's the strange part, that people have taken it and made it that. The people have done that.
Yeah,
you know,
money controls it, I suppose. That's the way they look at the rich man north of money controls everything, which is kind of crazy.
Nature.
Yeah, I want to talk about the next track, the one before that, Cage. That was a ripper as well. That one just came out recently too. Really cool track.
Thank you. Cage was one I wrote right after the accident, the family accident that had happened. And I wrote it in a very, very dark place. I wrote it just acoustic guitar and me, and I was performing it actually in London. I had residencies at a few venues in London. But there was one place that I loved playing, two places I loved playing, Troubadour and Half Moon in Putney. And I remember performing that song, and people reacted and responded. And I thought, okay, this is a raw song. And so I had to put it on the record. It's an old song, but I had to put it on the record. So it's one of the ones that's dearest to my heart on this album.
Yeah, it's an amazing track. It came out really well. All of them did, and they got some cool artwork. I like that you've got your individual artwork for each of the singles as well.
Yes, my queens for each one. Yes, it's an actual artist. He's an Eastern European artist a graphics designer who eventually I'm going to expose him and put him out there for all his work too. So love bringing artists along with me on this journey.
No, that's absolutely amazing. And you did touch on the live performances. How have they been, getting that out there and playing these tracks for the people as well before?
Yeah, well, we've had two shows. Again, everything it just started in August for us. We decided to launch in August of 2023. So it's not been long. And doing these two shows with Peyton showed us we're ready. And late spring, early summer, we're gearing up to start the festivals in the summertime. I'm never in a rush. One of the things that I don't know what it is about me. I don't necessarily jump to the beat, of everybody else's drum. If someone says jump, you have to go now. I tend to go, actually, patience is going to actually pay off because we've got work. We've got work to do. Looking forward to actually taking this album on the road. And we've got a second album that we're almost halfway finished with, and a third one in the works.
Well, that's important to have a plan and to be working hard. And the way you release music now is a hell of a lot different, even back to 2012. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean? Like, you'd release a single and then you drop an album. These days, you got to drop your tracks. You drop the Queen of Blame, Allegiance, This Is a War, Never Be Caged. You got the Rich Man, and then you kind of give people a chance to listen to it, and then you drop the bloody album as well, which is kind of even your dad, probably the times that he was in the music career compared to now, he's probably like, oh my God, wow, it's so different.
Absolutely. It's a different era. Especially with streaming and with the internet, and how easily and quickly it's no longer a record mentality. It's a single mentality, So, and luckily the album had a lot of songs on it that could be released as singles. We didn't write the album for singles, but the album does have a lot of songs that are singles. So
I'm looking forward to diving into the album as well. I love listening to whole albums. That's just my age, being in my 40s now as well. What are we looking? We're looking at maybe an American spring. So around March, June release for the album?
Yes. March is exactly when we're looking to release it.
Awesome.
Yes.
And you've got a website,
FadingNemesis.com.
Cool.
And then you can find us on YouTube and Spotify and all streaming platforms, and Instagram. It's Fading Nemesis, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, social media, and I'm an ancient soul, but we're on there.
Aren't we all, mate, at this time of our lives? That's for sure. So you did touch on your books as well. Are you able to plug that at all? Did you want to give us a...
No, yeah. Well, I can. Again,
well, don't wait. I'll hit you up again for this. Maybe catch up with you next year when the album's a little closer to release, and we can talk about the album and we can talk about the books. Farah, look, this has been an absolute pleasure, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me, Jay.
Shout-outs, thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to add in there, mate?
Well, I honestly want to thank everyone who has been here with us from the last few months. Honestly, this is why I do what I do. It's been worth the journey. And Jai, thank you again for having me on the show. Looking forward to what's ahead. So
absolute pleasure, mate. Everybody get some Fading Nemesis, chuck it in the stereo, crank it up really loud. The neighbors are going to want to hear it as well. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Jai.
Thanks so much for tuning in to another edition of The Bloody Legends with Jai, that Aussie metal guy, and Jim Taylor. Make sure you're a bloody legend and hit that like and subscribe so you can keep up to date with all the great content from these bloody legends.